the next question will be a question which asks you to explain what is important about something the Normans did. Okay? In this question, the one I've set is what was important about the feudal system and land ownership. Okay? So, in this question, when you get an explain what was important, try if you can to think of two things that were important, okay, in relation to the, in this case, feudal system, whatever. And I would say I'm going to choose two things for you and just model the kind of things I would do. Okay, so I'm going to say one of them was important was the idea of patronage. I'm going to explain what that means. And the second thing was important was this idea of inheritance. Those are the two things I want to explain that I think were really important when understanding what the Normans did to the feudal system and how land was divided up. Okay, so here we go. Let's have a look. So I'm going to just think about planning for a second, and then I'm going to show you what that might look like in an answer. Okay? So the first thing is patronage. Now, I've used that word. It's a deliberately slightly tricky word, but I think if you learn it now, it's a really good one. What does patronage mean? Patronage means giving land for loyalty. And that was the essence of the feudal system, isn't it? Okay? That was what the feudal system was all about. And the Normans were very keen to ensure loyalty, and the way they received it was through land. So what did William do? Well, under the Normans, William owns everything, okay? And then he distributes land to his followers, and they, in return, supply him with knights and support. Okay, that's the way the system works. All right. What does this do? It allows for William to have enormous power because he can give or take land in order to secure loyalty. And that's a very powerful way of getting people to follow what he wants them to do. Okay? It's also worth bearing in mind that William retains 20% of the land himself. Alright? So under this system of patronage, it's a very, very powerful way of getting people to do what you want. He can't possibly run the whole country by himself. He has to have people to help him do it. But obviously he wants those people to follow what he wants. So he says, you do what I want and I'll give you land. As long as you do what I want, we're fine. So I say that's really important about the way that the feudal system worked. I say the other really important, or a other thing you could talk about is this idea of inheritance. And the Normans make sure that inheritance works in their favour. So what do they introduce? They introduce something called primogeniture, which means that all land goes to the oldest son. And why do they do that? They do that because then it means the large Norman estates are kept together. Okay? And what happens then is it means there's continuity, things don't change. Okay? And that helps the king ultimately. Because if he knows that the loyal son of someone who was loyal before is going to take over, it allows him to be more in control of the country. Okay? The other important thing about inheritance is if a lord died with no son, the heir, that land goes to the king. So look, I've got two things there which I think are really, really important about land ownership and the feudal system. and I'm going to tell you how I would then put that in some sort of written response. Okay? So here's what I'd do. I'd say, and I always like to sort of turn the question on its head and sort of really just show the examiner that I'm really focusing on this question. So one important thing about land ownership was the system of patronage. Okay? All land was owned by the king, who rewarded his followers with land for their loyalty. Okay. They in turn rewarded their followers. In return for knights. Okay? Now what does that mean? This meant the king had significant power, as he could take land from those who were not loyal. Okay? So it centralises power, in other words. Okay? And I'm also going to put there, William himself also retained 20% of the land. Okay? Now I'm going to put, it's not the perfect answer, but it's doing the right things. Now what's the second thing? Another important issue was the way inheritance was passed on. Under the Normans, all land was passed to the eldest son, and I'm going to use the actual word there because they like to see that, primogenitor. And if a lord died without an heir, land would pass to the person further up the feudal system. Okay? This meant that the king and the top Norman lords retained huge power because estates weren't broken up, making them harder to control. Now, again, I'm not telling you that that's the perfect answer, but what it's doing is it's clearly got two factors. It's used some evidence to say what was important. I would like just to make some point about both of these, and I think, what would I say? I'd say both of these factors help us to understand how William centralised power in his own hands and increased Norman control of England. And so I'm making a general point which I think just helps shows I've got a bit of a complex thinking in there as well. Okay? I'm going to pause it there. Right, there's a bit of paper